subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there was one person, a Bedouin at the time of the Holy Prophet, who came to the Holy Prophet and made a dua. And he says to the Holy Prophet, he raises his hand in front of the Holy Prophet and says, I pray to God to give all the blessings of this world and the hereafter to Muhammad and to me. So it's a beautiful dua. And Prophet ﷺ endorsed this. But he says, why have you limited the treasures of God just to you and I? Why didn't you include everyone in this beautiful supplication that you made? But this, at the end of the day, was a reflection of this Bedouin's impression of God. Right? So many a times the du'as that we make are generally influenced by how we think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? But when we go to the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimussalam, those who have all this knowledge of God, right? The way they recite their du'as, it's because they have the highest understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore the quality of the du'a, that supplication, is another level. So when this person comes to Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam on the first day of Rajab and says, please teach me a supplication, a formula with which I can speak and supplicate to God, Imam alayhi salam says, all right, write this down. Meaning, this is not something small. Don't take this for granted. Don't tell me that you're going to remember it. No, write it down. Preserve what I'm about to give you. So this companion sits next to the Imam and he starts making a note of this dua. And this is how we have this dua, Ya man arjuhu li kulli khair, which is recommended to recite between Maghrib and Isha, but also recommended to recite as many times as we can throughout the month. Now, in the remaining time, we'll just go through a few of the lines from this dua and try and extract certain meaning, inshallah, that we can. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammadin wa ajil farajum. This dua starts off as such, Ya man arjuhu li kulli khair. Sometimes I don't know the Arabic. I can't recite the Arabic. That's totally fine. We can always sit with a translation of this beautiful dua and read the translation and try and relate to it, right? But Ya man arjuhu li kulli khair, O the one in whom alone do I hope for every good. Now, question, why do I hope for good only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Look at this beautiful dua. O the one in whom alone do I hope for every good? And second question is, why am I hopeful in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The reason why I'm so hopeful in God, the first question, the reason why I'm so hopeful in God, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is my Rabb. He is my nourisher, and He is my cherisher, and He is the one who sustains me in every moment of my existence. He has taken it up upon Himself to make sure that I am moving towards my perfection. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's portfolio. He is my Rabb. Rabb is like that farmer who places the seed deep in a certain level underground. First makes sure that the soil is very fertile and conducive for growth, and then places the seed in the ground, and then makes sure that the seed is under certain conditions and provides a greenhouse, or if necessary, provides the right amount of water and fruit. When the seed starts growing and then gives it some support so that it starts growing straight and so on, this farmer, in a sense, is a Rabb for these plants. It makes sure that this seed reaches its potential. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, I only hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He is my Rabb. He is the one who can convert the potentials that I have in myself to a reality, to my perfection. And therefore, Ya Allah, I have hope in You, number one. Number two, the reason why I have hope in You is because You have instructed me, Ya Allah, to ask from You. And You have guaranteed that whoever knocks on Your door will never return empty-handed. And therefore, I hope in You. I have hope in You. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why I'm hopeful in You. Why am I hopeful only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Ya Allah, because You are the only supplier of goodness. Who else can dare say that He supplies goodness? Whatever goodness I see in people, whatever goodness I see around me, the essential source of that goodness is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, why would I go anywhere else? I want to go directly to the supplier of all goodness. And therefore, I place my hope only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why would I go to others other than God, where they themselves are in need, are needy and dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And therefore, I go to the one who is totally independent. Ya man arjuhu likulli khair. But look at how ambitious this first line is, right? When you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're not asking for small things. You're not asking for one or two good things. You are asking for every goodness that exists out there. Whether I know about that goodness or I don't know about that goodness. Ya man arjuhu likulli khair. Ya Allah, in this holy month of Rajab, I want to make it a point to ask you with this ambition. I want to ask you for every goodness that is out there. If I go to some people, they might be able to fulfill or give me one good or two good. But all of goodness is only from you, Ya Allah. So the first line beautifully starts off with Ya man arjuhu likulli khair. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. As Imam as-Sajjad alayhi salam, our fourth holy Imam, in this beautiful whispered dua that he has in Munajat of Rajin, he says, Kayfa arju ghayrak. Why would I hope for my needs? Why would I place my hopes in anyone else other than you? Right? Wal khayru kulluhu biyadik. Because goodness, all of it is in your hands. You are the only supplier of goodness, Ya Allah. Why am I seeking it from anyone else other than you? And my respected brothers and sisters, the more dua that we do, the more we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's quite interesting. The more we ask people for good or for anything for our needs, the more distant we become from people. The next time that person, sees me, he knows I ask a lot. The next time he sees me, he probably wants to avoid me. This is the relationship that we would have. The more we ask people, the further the relation gets. With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we ask God, the more we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the relationship's an inverse relationship. The closer the connection becomes. And therefore you see the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, those who are really close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything in their lives, small or big. Ya man arjuhu likulli khair. Oh, the one in whom alone I hope for all goodness. The second line of this beautiful dua is wa amanu sakhatahu inda kulli shar. And Ya Allah, I am safe from any displeasure at every instance of sin. Right? So this is another beautiful line where we are showing our confidence in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Ya Allah, even though I have transgressed so many of your commands, sometimes I've done this fine, out of ignorance is fine, but sometimes I have done this defiantly, like I knew that this was your command, and I knew that you have disapproved this particular action, and I was sure that this action did not escape your watchful eye, yet Ya Allah, I was defiant when I was committing this particular offense. But in Dua Rajab, look at the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that even though I was sinning, I was like from the bottom of my heart, I felt very safe from your displeasure. وَآمَنُوا سَخَطَهُ عِنْدَ كُلِّ شَرٍ. This displeasure of God, just a point for our younger brothers and sisters, this displeasure of God and the pleasure of God does not mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes through different states of emotions. God has no emotions, God does not change state. The pleasure of God means the reward of God. The displeasure of God is the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the natural consequence that Allah has kept for the offenses that we commit. So in the dua we raise our hands and say, Ya Allah, even though I was committing these offenses, these evils, this shar, I still felt very safe from your punishment. Just try and imagine, my respected brothers and sisters, anytime that we committed a sin, the displeasure of God would come down to us straight away. Imagine if God had created a system as such, that any time that we would transgress, the punishment would come down straight away. Imagine any time that we would sin, the sin that we commit in secret would be exposed to all around us. No, Allah doesn't have a system like this. This is His mercy, right? So as we say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the hadith says, waits for the individual to recognize that he's made a mistake, and He's waiting for an opportunity for the servant to turn back to Him. And therefore, this holy month of Rajab is the prime time, this fertile time, for all of us to try and recognize and think of all those things that we had done, the habits that are still part of our lifestyle, and to try and remove this and turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya man yu'til kathira bil qalil, subhanallah. Or the one who gives in abundance in return for every little that we do. Right, so as we said, you recite a 2 rakah salah, a 2-unit prayer in the month of Rajab, just a 2-unit prayer, and the reward that is given for that 2-unit prayer is 60 hajj. Right, I've always said this, right, in our traditions, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to show the greatness of reward, He would compare it to the reward of 1 hajj. So the ziyarah of Imam Rada alayhi salam is compared to the reward of hajj, and so on. Reciting a 2-unit prayer in the month of Rajab has the reward of 60 hajj, right? This is the overflowing mercy of Allah. Doing something small is rewarded amply. It's like that young child gets up from the dinner table, takes the dirty plate and puts it in the sink. And the parents are overjoyed and starts clapping. Wow, what amazing. Let's go, I'll take you to Kmart and buy you whatever you want. He just put the plate in the sink. But this is God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at our individual capacity. That the summer fasts were really long. It wasn't easy to fast in December, in Jan, in summertime. But no, He made an effort. He tried it. And for that trial of His, for that effort, it's not going to go unrewarded. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya man yu'til kathira bil qalil. Just do the qalil, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will look after the rest, right? Ya man yu'ti man sa'ala, or the one who gives to those who ask. Allah loves those who ask. But no, Allah is so merciful, that the next line says, Ya man yu'ti man lam yas'alhu. He gives the one who doesn't ask. Waman lam ya'arifu. You've heard people saying this with so much arrogance, that this issue of God, I reject it totally. This idea of God is blasphemy, and so on and so forth, right? They totally reject God. In Dua of Rajab, it says, Ya man yu'ti man lam yas'aluhu. You don't ask God, that's fine. Waman lam ya'arifu. You reject God, that's okay. You still see them languishing in the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because the beautiful dua says, Tahannuna minhu wa rahmah. This is the mercy, overflowing love and compassion and mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. You know, when you have a person who's got a very generous nature, and he hears of people in a distant town, different culture, different religious beliefs, he has no idea who those people are, but he just heard them going through a really difficult time. Because he's got a generous nature, he wants to make sure that he can contribute some of his extra to go and alleviate the suffering of those who don't even know him. Why does he do this? That's his nature. He's just a generous person. He loves giving. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Dua of Rajab that I give to those who don't even ask. I give in abundance to those who even reject me. But what about those who ask? Those who ask are special members of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, and sometimes you have to pay a certain subscription to get exclusive membership rights. This is when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So special rewards are asked for those who keep knocking on the door of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we keep knocking? Is to just raise our hands after Maghrib, after Isha, throughout this month of Rajab, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the dua ends beautifully by saying, A'atini بِمَسْأَلَتِي إِيَّاكَ. Ya Allah, please give me, please grant me. Why are we asking, why do we feel entitled to ask Allah that please grant me? The reason why I feel entitled that you should give me is because you have mentioned it in your book, Ya Allah, that ud'uni astajib lakum. Ask me and I will grant you. So Ya Allah, in the holy month of Rajab, I have raised my hand. I have turned my heart to you. And because I have asked you, I am expecting a response. Subhanallah. أعطني بمسألتي إياك. Please give me because I'm asking you. Ya Allah, what am I expecting from you? Not something small. Imam Baqir alayhi salam, we are celebrating his birthday, has a beautiful hadith. He says, لا تحقروا صغيرا من حوائجكم. Do not belittle the small things when it comes to your needs. You know, sometimes we only reserve the big du'as for God. The small things in our lives, we tell Allah, I will sort them out myself. No, involve God in every single matter of your life. You're looking for parking? Boxing Day was tough to get Allah involved in looking for parking. Allah SWT tells Prophet Musa alayhi salam, even ask me for the salt of your food. Imam Baqir says, لا تحقروا صغيرا من حوائجكم. Do not belittle those small needs that you have. Because the most beloved to God is as'aluhum, the one who asks God the most. Subhanallah, right? So, أعطني بمسألتي إياك. What are we asking Allah? جميع خير الدنيا وجميع خير الآخرة. And when you go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have high ambitions. Ask for everything, ask for big things. You know, imagine you get an audience at a palace of this very powerful, rich king, and this child is there, for example, and the king asks the child, what do you want? And this kid says, chocolate ice cream. The king will say, I'll give you the chocolate ice cream, but I'm the king. I have the treasures of this country. Ask me for bigger things and greater things, more lofty aspirations. So look at the aspiration in this dua. أعطني بمسألتي إياك جميع خير الدنيا وجميع خير الآخرة. Inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that as we've entered this holy month of Rajab, this very spiritually rich month, to inspire us to be those who supplicate to Him, inshallah, more, that we can derive maximum benefit from this month, and inshallah we can prepare ourselves in this holy month in Sha'ban leading up to Laylatul Qadr. We also would like to use this opportunity, inshallah, my respected brothers and sisters, that people who are suffering around the world, not everyone has this privilege to attend the majalis of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, so in such a nice comfortable setting without any fear of their lives and property and their families and so on. So we want to use this opportunity on this very blessed night to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to alleviate the suffering of all those who are going through a difficult time. There are people who are sick who have asked us to pray for them as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to please bring them quick recovery. And most importantly, we ask for the quick reappearance of our 12th Holy Imam, Imam al-Hujjah.